Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Have no worries, it's not the same speech as last year. Thank you, Post Commander Weakland, for that very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could just take a moment, I learned just before coming up here of the recent death of Navy Corpsman Heather Lynn Williamson of Ebensburg. So if you please remember her in your thoughts and prayers on this special day, I would greatly appreciate it. So good morning, officially. Thank you for coming out today for Carrolltown's observance of Memorial Day, a day set aside for us to pay tribute to our fallen heroes. It's a great honor for me to speak once again this year in our hometown and on their behalf. As we stand here in the bright, warm morning sun of our Allegheny Mountains, as we stand among the places that have seen our history unfold, as we look around at family and friends that we have known all our lives, it's hard to imagine that the world beyond this place could be a cold, dark, and often dangerous place. A world in which the ugliness of war could suddenly snatch away those we know and love. All too often it is, and all too often it does. Yet, we remain free. We remain free because our brave brothers, fathers, sisters, and mothers, our brave cousins, uncles, and aunts, our friends and acquaintances, answered the call to arms. And in so doing, they followed the path of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, men of courage who so loved freedom and who so loved their families that when the call came, who shall we send and who will go for us? They said, as Americans have always said, here I am, send me. From where does that kind of courage come? From where does one summon up the nerve, the devotion to duty, the willingness to sacrifice even to the point of death? It comes from you, ladies and gentlemen. Men and women answer the call of their nation, but they fight for their families. They fight for their friends. They fight for those at home, and they fight for those on their left and on their right. And too often, they die for us. The strength of America is standing right here. Regardless of what you read in the news, regardless of what you hear on television, regardless of the posts on social media that say America's best days are behind us, please know that brave American men and women stand the watch around the world 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They stand for freedom, yours and mine. And the world knows they are there. They are strong because we are strong. Their spirit is our spirit. And on this day of all days, they know they can depend on us. We recognize ourselves, we recognize their spirit, and we recognize our fallen heroes, in the words of the 19th century English philosopher John Stuart Mill, who wrote, Can you hear me now? Should I start over? All right, I'll save my voice. John Stuart Mill wrote, War is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling which thinks that nothing is worth war is much worse. The man who has nothing for which he is willing to fight, nothing which is more important than his own personal safety, is a miserable creature and has no chance of being free unless made and kept so by the exertions of better men than himself. Our history is full of examples of the exertions of better men from Carrolltown and the surrounding area. Here are just a few. Charlie Farbaugh was born on the Huber Farm 3 miles south of Carrolltown in December 1889. In January of 1896, it was reported that he had perfect attendance at the Snyder School, number 7 in Carroll Township. As an adult, Charlie taught in the rural elementary schools of Cambria County for 3.5 years, and then taught at the Ebensburg High School from 1914 to 1915. When World War I broke out, Charlie answered the call. He was a sergeant in the Quartermaster Corps, spending the war in Paris as an office worker for the Army. He wrote many letters home. Charlie was an unforgettable, personable man, and interesting for his love of medicine, history, academics, and politics. Many of his accomplishments came relatively late in life. You see, Charlie survived his war, but his example inspired others. Ultimately, Charlie was asked to place a great personal sacrifice on the altar of freedom: his son and his son-in-law. Charlie's son graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1950. The Army Citation for Bravery awarded to him describes the valor, commitment, and service before self that only derives from the love of family and friends. I quote, "The Distinguished Service Cross is awarded to First Lieutenant Charles K. Farbaugh, Infantry, United States Army, for extraordinary heroism in action while serving as a member of an infantry company on July 17, 1952, in the vicinity of Haduchon, Korea. Lieutenant Farbaugh led a combat patrol deep into enemy-held territory for the purpose of locating and probing hostile troops. The patrol was surprised by a numerically superior enemy force, and a fierce firefight ensued. During the battle, Lieutenant Farbaugh observed an element of the enemy force moving slowly to the left of the patrol's position in a flanking maneuver. After carefully estimating the situation, Lieutenant Farbaugh ordered the patrol to withdraw. He then moved from his protective cover through the intense enemy fire to a position from which he could cover the threatened flank. With complete disregard for his own personal safety, Lieutenant Farbaugh laid down such a withering hail of fire that the hostile forces were repelled. While he was covering the withdrawal of his patrol through the cleared sector, Lieutenant Farbaugh was mortally wounded." Charlie's son-in-law, Herbert Burt Brennan, graduated from West Point in 1947 and became an Air Force pilot, earning the Distinguished Flying Cross while serving in the Korean War. He volunteered as a fighter pilot for the Vietnam War. On November 26, 1967, he was flying an F-4C Phantom in the vicinity of Bon Carai Pass in a remote region of the Quang Binh province of North Vietnam. On their first pass over the target, his wingman reported that Burt's plane burst into flames. No parachutes were seen. Burt Brennan was declared missing in action and later declared died while missing. He was included on the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. In recent years, excavation of the crash site and interviews with Vietnamese in the area suggest that Burt survived the crash and was likely taken prisoner. No further details have emerged regarding his fate. Other families on other days also sacrificed. We remember them as well. Joe Bishop, age 17, was killed in Korea. At that age, he would have needed his parents' permission to sign up. He was a member of the 8th Cavalry Regiment, 1st Cavalry Division. He was seriously wounded by the enemy in South Korea on January 26, 1951, and died of those wounds on February 15, 1951. Private Bishop was awarded the Purple Heart, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Korean Service Medal, the United Nations Service Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Presidential Unit Citation, and the Republic of Korea War Service Medal. He is buried right here in St. Benedict Cemetery.